All right, I want to welcome everybody to the Portage County Safety Council. I can't believe it is already April. This year is going by so fast. And the weather up here in Northeast Ohio is just crazy. It was 80 and sunny, and now it's 30 degrees and snowing, and hopefully it's going to warm up again because I know, like the rest of you, I am ready for some summertime and to be outside. I'm excited for today's presenter. As you might have heard, Dan with the Ohio EPA is here to speak with us. Much like what we do here in BWC with safety consulting, they have some awesome consulting services and connection opportunities that you might not be aware of. So I'm really excited to hear about this today. Getting a weird feedback maybe from Rachel's side there.
There we go.
All right, there we go. All right, awesome. For those of you who have not had the opportunity to meet yet in person, my name is Nick Coy. I'm with the Ohio BWC. That's my contact information. If you're working on safety and health programs, please reach out to me. That's what I'm here for, help you to improve your safety and health programs. I want to remind you about some updates we have happening here in the state. In the month of May, we have a huge list of virtual classes. We have anything from machine guarding to electrical safety to hazardous waste materials. Check out these classes. There is no cost to them. They're open to you. You can attend them virtually from the comfort of your home or your office. All you need to do is go to bwclearningcenter.com to sign up for them. And it's really nice because these classes are interactive. So it's not just watching a presentation. We interact with you as participants, answer your questions, and hopefully fill in some of those missing pieces that might be beneficial for your organization. Along the same lines, we've started a BWC webinar series, and we have 3 webinars scheduled for the month of May. I encourage you to check these out. Also, they are 1-hour sessions. We get professionals from across the division to put these together and talk about various topics. And I'm really actually pretty excited about the air quality one because I have a lot of companies struggling with that. And then we have an EPA one where we did some, we're actually doing a joint venture on that piece. So I'm really excited for that to come together too. So what you may not know is that Ohio BWC offers the personalized safety services. This is part of your premiums. We are a consultative agency, which means we're not an enforcement agency. We're here to help you identify your safety concerns, make improvements to that, and help you protect your workers to keep your premiums low in the state of Ohio. We'll do anything from provide written programs, safety talks, to coming on site and doing training. I just did that this morning, 6 a.m. I was out with a company doing some safety training. We'll also do on-sites. Next week, I have 2 of those scheduled where we'll walk around and do a mock OSHA walkthrough, help you identify those safety concerns. We also have ergonomists and industrial hygienists that will help you in those specialized areas. The BWC library is an excellent service to get videos from and to assist with research and prep, and also to help you identify those consensus standards. But they've started something new. They have the BWC library question of the month. And I thought, what better place to highlight these pieces than right here? So the question that was submitted to the library for this month is, what does OSHA or ANSI say about revoking a forklift operator's license who had an accident? Answer to that is, OSHA and ANSI do not say that an employer shall revoke it. However, when you have an accident, a near miss, or reckless operation, you shall provide refresher training in those areas. So if you have a forklift program, this should be part of that, and you should be documenting that. And if you're not doing that now, that's all right. Let's fix it. Let's move forward and get that corrected. And if you need help developing those training programs or some help with your written programs, please let me know. I would be more than happy to come out and help you with that. I also want to talk about something new happening at the Ohio BWC. We have started our Workforce Safety Innovation Center. We have announced a $30 million in grants available for research and development of personal protective equipment innovations here in the state of Ohio. So we will administer the grants with a goal of accelerating the process of your innovations from proof of concept to the marketplace. So if you have some new PPE ideas, things that are going to keep workers safer, let me know, and let's get you in contact with our Workforce Safety Innovation Center. Some great opportunities for funding to help you keep Ohio workers safer. All right, with that, I am going to turn it over to today's sponsor, which is US Safety Gear. We're always happy to partner with them, and they have a few messages for us.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Nick. I appreciate it. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Gotcha. Just a couple of things real quick, and I'm going to turn it over to our new territory rep, Ms. Rachel Gibbon. Go ahead. There's our main slide. Go ahead and hit the second slide if you could, please. There is Miss Rachel Gibbs, our territory manager for Portage County. Rachel's been with US Safety Gear for a couple of years. She does an outstanding job. She's already kicking hind end and taking prisoners later in Portage County. So there's her contact information. Give her a call, and she'll be happy to help you out. And she's just an outstanding individual. We're real pleased to have her on board. And plus, she's a lot better looking than I am, so it should help in sales, whatever. But if you want, Rachel, if you want to say a few things, I'm still involved in this project here. I'm doing this live from my car, everybody. So I'm like torn between two
You're
things.
getting
Anyway,
some sun,
Rachel,
it looks like.
yeah, I got to get some sun. But anyway, go ahead, Rachel, if you want to pop in here and say something.
Okay, well, hi everybody. I'm Rachel. I'm with US Safety Gear, as Terry said. Been with the company for almost 4 years now. So I'm taking on the sales role, and I'm super, super excited about it. So Portage County is going to be my territory, and I am ready to offer all the services that US Safety Gear has to provide. We offer such a wide range of safety supplies, from personal PPE, fall protection, fancy industrial footwear. We are hooked up with the custom apparel department, and it's just booming. It's super exciting. So I'm ready to introduce myself to anyone in Portage County in the industrial side. So please feel free to contact me, schedule a meeting. We can talk about just about any of the services that we provide. So
outstanding. And go ahead, Nick. Go ahead and hit the. We'll keep going. So there's a mini company profile for whoever wants to see it. Mike asked me a question. He goes, "I didn't realize how big US Safety Gear is, and we are substantially a pretty good sized company." And one of the things that me and Mike and Nick talked about before we came on board, or excuse me, went live, is that we would like to have everybody from Portage County come down for a luncheon, and we host luncheons all the time at our main distribution center. It's like I said, it's a 110,000 square foot facility, so we have the capacity to bring in large crowds. Matter of fact, I think on May 3rd or May 4th or May 4th or May 5th, we're having an event for outdoor signage for all the townships and villages in the Portage County, Trumbull County, Mahoning County, Geauga County area for potential individuals to come in and check out traffic safety and things like that. So we're pretty excited about that. Go ahead, Nick, flip it there, buddy. And then some of the corporate products we provide that Rachel touched on, and we are a very diversified company, very diversified. If you ever came into US Safety Gear, our complex, you would be shocked as to what all we do. So, and by the way, to do all these different things, we have a great employee base. Our employees are outstanding. I give them all the credit for our success, and of course, all credit goes to God too as well. But anyway, go ahead, Nick. Keep going. A couple services that we offer: implant stores, promotional items, apparel, marketing, graphic services, yada yada yada. We get, as Rachel said, our apparel business is absolutely huge. We have 3 graphic artists on staff. Of course, we have we do work with the Cleveland Guardians now. We provide them with all their apparel for the stadium, the Cleveland Cavaliers, people like Nestle's. We do a lot of work for our friends over at Summit Racing as well. So it's pretty cool that we've been able to supply those customers. And of course, here they got the shoe brands here we carry on our safety shoe trailer: Timberland, Ariat. My wife is calling me, and I'm going to put her on hold for a moment. Double H, Thorogood. Go ahead, Nick, hit the next one. There's one of our safety shoe mobile units. And please, you know what? Feel free to contact Rachel G to book an appointment today. We already are busy in Portage County, and the safety shoe trailer is an outstanding service. The prices are competitive, and we've been really successful with that. Go ahead, Nick.
Terry, is that what you camp in at West Branch right there? Is that what you use? Kind of sell shoes during the week and take it to West Branch on the weekends?
You better not give away any of my trade secrets, man. You're crazy.
Company write-off.
So, well, you know something, I'm going to get off topic here. There's a fallacy that people always say, well, you can take a loss on this and take a loss on that. Before you do that, you got to make money. You just don't open up a business and take a loss. I always get that stuff all the time. But anyway, So the breaking news, God, you're crazy. I have so much fun doing these with you guys. You know, it's just a blast. Could you imagine what would happen if we did this in person? It would be like comedy hour, wouldn't it? Anyways, the breaking news I share with Mike and Nick and Dan before we came on, it looks like that U.S. Safety Gear will be opening up a location in Portage County in the Frost Road 480 area. We're pretty confident that's going to happen, and we will let everybody know, of course, when that transpires, and we'll probably have an open house event, invite everybody come over. Everybody likes free food and free goodies and things like that. I do. So we're pretty excited about that. And lastly, but not least, let's go to the last slide. Okay, here's the deal. Mike always says I'm the king of the giveaways, which I am. You know, people like free stuff. So we have this contract with the Guardians, all right? And we have the ability to print our sponsorship with the Guardian C, the Cleveland C, on T-shirts. So all I'm asking you, if you want a free T-shirt, here's the contact information included. Email Rachel G, your shirt size. And one thing I do ask, at least give her the courtesy of an appointment to stop in and say, hey, and she might bring you more than just a Guardians T-shirt. She may bring you something else, who knows? But anyway, Rachel, you have anything else to add to that?
Not a whole lot more, but I'm excited to meet everyone. So I really hope that this, the opportunity is there and we can discuss any of the safety services that US Safety Gear has going on right now. So I am excited about that. Awesome. So thank you for letting me be a part of this. This is my first time doing this.
Awesome, thank you. And I want to give a shout out to Lisa Rumpel too as well. She's already texted me and says, I'm on, Terry. So hey, Lisa, wherever you are. And if anybody has any questions for me real quick, I got about a minute or two left. I can entertain them. Just let me know.
All right, well, thank you so much, Terry. I'm going to stop sharing real quick and check the chat here, see what we got going on. Just some people saying hello. And let's see, here we go. That's about it. Just people saying hello, excited to be here at Portage County Safety Council. Terry, we really appreciate your sponsorship and your work with Portage County. And I'm really excited about a Streetsboro store opening up. That's right here. That's my service territory. We have so many customers.
Home of the Rockets, if you can't see that right there. They beat Field. I'm just saying, Nick, all the time. I only have to keep track of it.
I hope they have a Cracker Barrel location over like we have in Rootstown. That's when I hang out.
Right up the exit in Twinsburg. Right up there. It's not
as good as Rootstown. The food's not as good as Rootstown. So anyway, thank you guys so much for having us. I truly appreciate it. May God bless your families and your health and everything, and look forward to doing a couple sponsorships in the rest of the year.
All right, well, we look forward to having you here. And thank you again for being here. Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you for our speaker introduction.
All right, we are super excited. As you know, Dan, thanks for letting us get through all the housekeeping and everything we got to do to get through there. We're very excited to have you on today. You guys are in for a treat. As I said earlier, he's the funniest government employee in all of America, maybe. It was Ohio 10 minutes ago. Now it's these United States. And so, Dan, you may not be Captain Planet, but you're definitely our environmental superhero. So we appreciate you. All right. So let me give you a little info about him as we get Dan on here. Dan Sowry currently serves as Assistant Environmental Administrator of Ohio EPA's Office of Compliance Assistance and Pollution Prevention within the Division of Environmental and Financial Assistance. Dan oversees Ohio EPA's Sustainability Program, Recycling and Litter Prevention Grant Program, Pollution Prevention Program, Environmental and Compliance Assistance Program, Ohio Materials Marketplace Program, and Encouraging Environmental Excellence Program. Dan holds a Bachelor of Science in Environmental Biology and has over 22 years experience working at Ohio EPA in various roles. Dan, one thing's for sure, you do a lot of things. There's a lot of programs in there. So you have a lot of expertise, and we're so glad to have you. I know you can't hear the thunder and applause on Zoom, but Dan, welcome.
Wow. Thank you, Mike. And recorded and I was in person, I maybe would be a little funnier, but it is what it is in this virtual world. So Mike, Nick, thank you again for the opportunity. I really, really appreciate it. I really like the fact that you guys always help us spread the word about our program and our services. Nick, you were talking about that construction webinar. I'm actually the presenter from Ohio EPA for that webinar as well. Lisa Houston will be joining me from BWC. to talk about the OSHA aspects for the construction industry. But just if it helps, if you enjoy this presentation, definitely check out the May 19th presentation for the construction industry. All right, are we good to go? You guys can hear me? Thumbs up. All right.
Yep, you look good. It's all yours.
I look good. That's a good start, right? So what are we going to cover here? Well, we're going to cover all of Ohio EPA's regulations somehow in 45 minutes or less. I don't know if that's possible, but I'm going to try my best. Obviously, I can't cover every single regulation, but I'm going to try my best to hit the major highlights, some proper waste management, and then at the very end, I'm going to plug our services and what we can do to help you. So let's start with air pollution. What needs an air permit? Well, the best news is there's no actual list of what exactly needs an air permit. So before we get into that, it's important to understand these different terms. There's this term air pollution source, air contaminant source, emission unit. Basically, it's anything that produces some type of form of air pollution. And your air permit, if you do need one, your air permit will cover each one of those sources or emission units of air pollution. And can you guys see my cursor on the screen as well? I'm just wondering if I can use that. Okay.
Yeah, we can see your cursor when you move it around.
Okay. So what needs, jumping ahead, what is an air permit? So I use this thing called 4 rules of thumb. Do you have something that has a stack, a vent, or a dust collector? Do you use some kind of solvents, paints, inks, adhesives? Do you have something that burns a fuel? And this is an emergency generator, just in case you're wondering what on earth is that thing. If you guys have backup emergency generators, I'm telling you right now, you're going to need an air permit, and I'll explain the exact type that you need. But that's an example of something that burns a fuel, usually diesel fuel, or something that causes smoke, dust, or odor. So if you have like a gravel parking lot or roadway, I'm not talking about public roadways, but private roadways, you potentially are going to need an air permit for the dust that results from that. So some common things that need air permits, large boilers, printing presses, painting operation, dry cleaners, and there's a slew of other ones obviously out there. Does everything need an air permit? No, not everything needs an air permit. In fact, there are 3 exemptions. We're going to go through each one of these. This first one are the permitted exemptions. And if you're an attorney and you really like to geek out and just read the rules, I put all the rule citations on here for you. But in Chapter 31, Rule 3, there are about 60 different types of equipment and processes that do not need air permits. And if you do have any of these, you do not need to notify Ohio EPA. However, if you find out during this presentation that you have an air permit for something that's permanently exempt or meets some type of exemption, please let me know, as I need to help you get out of that air permit. So some examples of some things that are permanently exempt. If you have like a quality control aspect to your process, and maybe you have a laboratory fume hood, those are exempt. Boilers under 10 million BTU per hour, those are exempt. Storage tanks for fuels, if they're under 19,000 gallons, those are exempt. Some more examples: sandblasting of outdoor structures, bridges, water towers, fences. Those are examples of things that are exempt. Road painting operations. If you have a small parts washer solvent, or a small solvent parts washer, as long as you're not using chlorinated solvents, and if you are using chlorinated solvents like xylene, toluene, methyl ethyl death, stay away from those things, because they can seriously cause not only harm to you, but also they will increase your regulatory requirements. If you have machining operations, so if you're grinding of metal processing, as long as it's vented to the inside, you probably don't need an air permit. And if you're reclaiming your solvents from your painting operations, as long as that solvent distillation unit's less than 20 gallons, that's specifically exempt. So going back to the question, does everything need an air permit? No, there's the 3 exemptions. So we talked about the permanent exemptions. Next is the permit by rule provisions. and we love our acronyms, so we call it PBR. I always think of Pabst Blue Ribbon or professional bull riding, but you know, that's just me. So this is found in chapter 31, rule 3. Again, some examples of things that fall under this permit by rule. There's that picture again. So if you have an emergency backup generator, you can actually apply for a permit by rule exemption. It sounds like it's a permit, but it's more a piece of paper saying, hey, I meet these terms and conditions and I fall out. Here are some other examples. Auto body shop. So if you're an auto body shop out there, you have 2 or less paint booths, I can get you exempt from your air permit by filling out this piece of paper. It's literally one piece of paper that you fill out, name and address. Yes, I meet the criteria. As soon as you put it in the mail, you are covered under that permit and there are no fees. All right, so the last one, we talked about permanent exemptions. We talked about permit by rule. The last one is DeMinimis, and that's a fancy way of saying it's not significant source of air pollution. In Ohio, and that's the rule citation, but in Ohio, we define that as 10 pounds of air pollutants per day. And if for any of you wondering, when I first came into the agency and started learning about air pollution, I've never understood how air pollution can be measured in pounds, let alone tons. But I can definitely help you make sense out of that, or one of our staff can. So if you're less than 10 pounds per day for air pollutants, or less than 1 ton for hazardous air pollutants, great example of hazardous air pollutants, xylene, toluene, methyl ethyl death, any of those nasty solvents, those are what we consider hazardous air pollutants, and that's 1 ton per year, then you fall under this de minimis exemption. Now you can't be subject to federal rules, so if you have like a dry cleaning unit and you're using perchloroethylene, perchloroethylene has been mismanaged for decades, if not centuries. Well, okay, let's not say centuries. How about decades? And therefore, dry cleaning facilities out there are subject to all kinds of federal rules if they're using PERC for short. So even though those 4th and 5th generation machines are definitely less than 10 pounds of air pollution per day, they still do not qualify for this de minimis exemption. However, there's actually a general permit that you can take advantage of, and I'll get to that here in a second. I jumped ahead there. This does require that you keep emission calculations on site every time that you're using it. So if you have like a small painting operation, and let's say your gallon of paint has 3.5 pounds of volatile organic compounds per gallon. So in that gallon of paint, you've got 3.5 pounds of that's actually going to volatilize off. It's going to become air pollution. And you only use 2 or 3 gallons of that in a day, then you're going to be under 10 pounds. That's an example of how you would need to keep those emissions, keep those calculations on site to show that you are under 10 pounds. And there's no requirement to notify Ohio EPA if you do fall under this de minimis. Again, if you think of any of your processes are de minimis under 10 pounds per day and you have an air permit, please contact us. And I'm specifically our program, and I'll tell you about that at the very end. But we need to get you out of your air permit if at all possible. All right, so if you don't fall under one of those exemptions, you could end up taking advantage of a general permit. Remember, I talked about dry cleaners. So here's an example of a permit that you can take advantage of. So if you do have a perchloroethylene type of dry cleaning facility, you can take advantage of this general permit. Nice thing is these are canned permits. So they already have all the terms and conditions. Ohio EPA staff permit writers don't have to come up with terms and conditions. In fact, you can take a look at all of the language ahead of time, know what you're getting into, understand your record keeping and reporting requirements. There's typically no calculations needed for these, and you do get these back in a very quick period of time. So there are some examples of general permit processes that could fall under a general permit, including those larger boilers over 10 million BTU per hour. Painting operations as well. And then again, if you had those dusty roads, we could possibly get those under general air permit. So another type, so if you don't fall under the general permit, you don't qualify for any of the exemptions, then more than likely you're going to need to get an actual air permit. Again, if you're meeting one of those 4 rules of thumb. We call these the permit to install and operate. Of course, we love our acronyms, so we call it a PTIO, but you have to have, as this sounds, you have to have this before you actually install and start operating the equipment. This is where people get in trouble, is they have the equipment, they're installing, they've been operating it for years, and then they find out, uh-oh, I needed an air permit. So if you do fall into that situation, there's a one-time installation fee. It's typically $200 for these air permits. Now, they can be significantly higher depending on the process, but most of them are about $200. So if you find out that, uh-oh, I should have had an air permit, go ahead and get the air permit, because you're going to get in worse trouble if you don't get the air permit that you needed. But what they're going to do is the agency is going to double that app or that installation fee. So instead of $200 for your permit, you're going to spend $400. But trust me, that's a lot better than $10,000 per day per violation for not having the permit. So the other thing is the permit to install or install and operate. It depends on how complex it is. If it's a pretty simple process, we can get that permit back out to you in a matter of a month or 2. If it's more complex, it can take up to 6 months. So if you think that you're going to be installing something that's going to trigger a need for an air permit, please get a hold of us up front and allow us to help you get that permit in place. And you have like a year and a half that you could have that permit before you even install the equipment. All right, so we're going to go through a self-assessment. This is what you would do at your facility to determine if you need an air permit. So you would tour your plant to identify all of the sources of air pollution. Again, you're going to use that 4 rules of thumb. So in that 4 rules of thumb, again, do you have a stack, a vent, or a dust collector? Do you have something that uses paints, solvents, inks, or adhesives? And that's where you're going to get those volatile organic compounds. Do you have something that burns a fuel? Or do you have something that causes smoke, dust, or odors? If you do, then identify whether or not any of those fall under the permitted exemptions or those Pabst Blue Ribbon permit by rules. Or determine if the operations could fall under that insignificant source called DeMinimis, again, 10 pounds per day. And then lastly, if none of those pan out, then you probably need an air permit. How do you avoid air violations or violations with this particular program? Well, number 1, identify if you have any sources of air pollution and whether or not they need a permit or they're exempt. If you do have an air permit, or if you have any permit from Ohio EPA, please read it. That's really important, because in the permit itself, it's not just a piece of paper to keep on file. It'll tell you you need to keep on-site records. You have certain reporting requirements that you send into the agency, and you can keep all those records electronically, but they do have to be accessible if the inspector shows up. Be aware of any visible emissions. You don't want a bunch of nasty smells or dust or smoke coming out of your facility, as that will definitely trigger citizen complaints. Maintain your air pollution control equipment. Again, if they see a bunch of stuff coming out, that's a good way to get inspected. And then don't do any open burning. This might sound obvious. And I don't know if you can tell on the slide here, but it looks like this gentleman might be down in Southeast Ohio. It looks like Old Man's Cave, where they're burning that or something. But anyway, and I don't know if you can see this, but this dude's got a cigarette hanging out of his mouth too. So if he wasn't worried about all the dioxins from burning all that wire, don't worry, he's getting it out of the tobacco as well. So in Ohio, don't burn anything. I'm from Pennsylvania, and yes, I can say that because I'm a native of Pennsylvania. But there, you can burn whatever you want as a homeowner or otherwise. It's strange, but here in Ohio, you cannot. So do not burn anything as a means of waste disposal. That's really the key. If it's any type of trash, including dead animals, and I say that because I actually had a neighbor who had goats, and he thought it was fun to burn those when they were dead. Like, dude, I'll dig a hole for you. Like, do you have to burn dead animals right next to my house? Yeah, and he knew where I worked. There are some exemptions where you can burn certain materials, typically if you're doing like land clearing or something like that, but you do need to get permission from Ohio EPA. I don't care what your fire department tells you, they don't have authority over open burning. It's actually Ohio EPA. So just because your fire department says, yeah, go ahead and burn that barn down, not so much. That's Ohio EPA. So give us a call, and certainly if you don't want to tip off the agency, I'm going to give you our confidential number and my direct number, so you can always reach out to us without any fear of inspectors showing up at your place. So we're going to switch gears. We're going to talk about water right now. So some of you might remember this, and I just literally interviewed a guy right before this for a position, and it's actually one of my old jobs in the agency, and he had this exact same picture and this same in his slide, and then he used the same wordage that I have. So I think presentation, but anyway, this is the Cuyahoga River catching on fire. Yay, Ohio's famous, but not in a good way. The Cuyahoga River didn't catch on fire once or twice. It caught on fire all the time. Why? Because we allowed all of our wastewater to go right out into what we call waters of the state. There were literally no regulations stopping this. Well, the fourth and most powerful branch of government, the people, said, we want clean water, we want clean air. And so in the 70s, they started pushing Congress, and Congress reacted. So in 1977, they claimed that they created the Clean Water Act. What it basically said was no person, including citizens, can discharge any type of pollutants to waters of the state without first having obtained a permit. And typically it's going to come from Ohio EPA. So before we get into the whole water end of the world, it's important that you understand the three different types of water discharges. People often confuse wastewater and call it all different sorts of things, but there's basically three different types. So there's sanitary wastewater. This is exactly what you think it is. And as the picture illustrates, this is what happens in our restrooms. Then there's processed wastewater, and there's a bazillion different types of examples. Like here's some rinse water. What is this? A cooling tower. Here's some equipment cleaning. Maybe it's air pollution control equipment. That's what the APC stands for. And then lastly, I really want to point this one out. So if any of you are like watching TikTok right now, hold on for a second, hit pause. If you're power washing stuff, that is considered an industrial wastewater, that resulting water. So believe it or not, that can get you in trouble oftentimes with our agency. Power washing off of vehicles or sides of buildings or whatever it might be. It does not matter if you're using any type of cleaning agents. Even if you're just using high pressure water, that resulting wastewater is considered an industrial wastewater and cannot go to waters of the state without having a permit. And then the last one is stormwater. This is another type of wastewater, but this is literally from what it sounds like. This is from storms. And here in Ohio, you guys all know, you can get rain, snow, sleet, and hail on the exact same day if you live in Ohio. But basically, this is when it storms and that rain or snow or sleet or hail, whatever, it hits whatever you have stored outside, and it picks those contaminants up, and then it runs it off site, creating all kinds of problems. So who needs to apply for, here's an acronym, right? What the heck does that stand for? So NPDES, who needs to have one of these National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permits? Well, it's basically anybody that's discharging pollutants to what we call waters of the state. Waters of the state has been highly contested on the federal level, but it's basically any body of water. But what I really want to zero in on is that includes conveyance systems like ditches and storm drains. So while people think that storm drains maybe go to the city sewer, they don't. They typically go right out to the nearest body of water. That's considered a conveyance system. So if you're allowing wastewater to go into that, you do need to have a permit. Some examples of questions to ask yourself: are you generating any type of liquid waste or processed wastewater like I showed you in a few of those pictures? And if these are discharged from your site, you're going to need one of those permits. So again, if it's like purge flushes or it's rinse waters, those are things that are going to definitely trigger industrial wastewater, and needing a permit. Some other questions to ask yourself. Are you discharging wastewater to a local water treatment plant? And if you don't know, are you paying a sewer bill or not? That's the easiest way to figure it out. If you're paying a sewer bill, you know you're connected to the city sewer. If you're not, then you might need to have your own wastewater treatment plant. Regardless, if that wastewater treatment plant, you will either work with the wastewater treatment plant for your permit, or you'll work with Ohio EPA. Just depends on who has authorization. Most of the wastewater treatment plants in the state, at least the publicly owned ones, they have authority to carry out these water regulations for Ohio EPA. So you would get your permit through them. And how this works is they regulate who discharges to their plant. We regulate what they discharge from that plant. So that's basically how it works. They regulate you because you're discharging to them. We regulate them as they're discharging to waters of the state. Some more questions to ask yourself. Are you going to treat that wastewater on site? So if you are discharging to a wastewater treatment plant, whether it's your own or the city's, more than likely you're going to have to adjust the pH. You're going to have to drop out the solids. You have to make sure the temperature's right. You may need to treat that wastewater prior to discharge. If so, you need a permit to install. And like it sounds, you need that permit to install before you actually put this equipment in. Switching gears a little bit, if you're going to be disturbing over 1 acre of land for some kind of construction project, maybe you're putting in a new building, a new parking lot, roadway, whatever it might be, and through that, you're going to be disturbing the vegetation. That's what we mean by disturbing over 1 acre land. So you're going to be removing the grass, the shrubs, the trees, whatever it might be. That can trigger or will trigger the construction stormwater requirements from Ohio EPA's Division of Surface Water. So there's a notice of intent that you would fill out. Then you need to have a stormwater pollution prevention plan, which you keep on site, basically dictating how you are going to keep the sediment from running off your site. And while you might not think this is a big deal, it's actually a huge deal. On a little local level, it's one thing, but on a global level, this is where it's emptying into the Gulf of Mexico, where the Mississippi and a bunch of the tributaries, including from at least half of Ohio, are contributing to it. All of that sediment, all of those pollutants run off your site. So that's the construction stormwater requirements. The other one that's stormwater is for manufacturers, recycling facilities, and transportation related type of businesses. In other words, if you have a fleet. So if you have a scrapyard, like you can see a horrible example of one right here, you are considered a recycling facility. You're going to need to have an industrial general stormwater permit, again, from the Division of Surface Water. There is an option to say, hey, I don't have anything stored outside. Obviously, the entity in the picture cannot say that, but you can obtain a no exposure certification. It doesn't cost anything. It's one piece of paper, you fill it out, but do know when you fill that out and send it in, an inspector is going to show up at your site. And they're going to verify that you don't have stuff stored outside. In other words, like if you have dumpsters, maybe you have a scrap metal bin or something like that stored outside, make sure you have a cover on top of that dumpster. That way, when the rain hits it, it doesn't end up washing pollutants off site. And you can qualify for no exposure, and you don't even need that permit. Where does your sewage go? Remember the kitty cat? That's what I'm talking about when we say sewage. So where does your sewage go? You might have your own wastewater treatment plant, or you might be discharging to the city. Again, if you don't know, are you paying a sewage bill? Then you're discharging to the city. If you're not, then you probably need to have your own wastewater treatment plant at your site, and that will require that you get a permit from our Division of Surface Water. All right, we're going to switch gears here. We're going to go to drinking water real quick. Are you connected to the city water? Well, again, kind of like sewer. Are you paying a water bill for your water usage with the city? That'll tell you whether you're connected to the city. Or maybe you have an on-site well. The big difference is you need to understand the difference between a private water system and a public water system. Private water systems are going to be handled by your local health department. and a public water system is regulated by Ohio EPA. So here's the definition. 25 or more people have access to water any 60 days per year. So if you're a church, if you are, and you have a big gathering and you're cooking a bunch of food, if you're a restaurant, again, you're not connected to the city water. Maybe you're an auction yard and you have a bunch of people coming in. Those could trigger, those could end up, that activity could end up meeting the definition of a public water system, and you would need to work with Ohio EPA for that permit. And basically, when we want to ensure that that water that people are coming in contact with is safe and clean for them. Now, I work in state government, and I obviously work for, when I work in state government, I said that backwards. I work for Ohio EPA and state government, but working at Ohio EPA, my better half and I, we live out in the sticks. We have our own well. Well, we get it. Well, no, come on, Nick. There you go. But we both work for state government. I work for Ohio EPA and she works for the Ohio Department of Health. So you can just imagine, we don't have any friends. So we definitely don't have 25 or more people coming over to our place 60 days a year. So we only have to work with the local health department, just as an example. Some common water violations, obviously make sure that you have a permit before you're discharging anything. Make sure that you're discharging into the right types of things. You cannot take like nasty industrial wastewater and dump it into your home septic system or a dry well or something like that. Make sure that if you're going to be treating your wastewater prior to it going to that wastewater treatment plant, that you have that permit to install ahead of time. Make sure if you're triggering either construction or industrial stormwater, you have that permit. Some other violations that are really common is providing periodic sample results. Again, this is where reading that permit is vital, because it will require that you take certain samples and that you're doing certain type of record keeping and reporting to Ohio EPA. And if you're exceeding any of your limits, you need to let us know. If you're doing sampling, there's specific types of sampling methodology you need to follow. Failure to maintain and calibrate your wastewater treatment equipment, that sort of thing. All right, and I am hurrying along here because we are done at noon, correct, Nick? All right, so I'm going to try to get through this real quick so we have time for some questions. So last thing I'm going to talk about is some waste, and I'm not going to talk about every single type of waste that you could possibly generate, but I'm going to talk about some real common waste streams that you all generate, believe it or not. So under the hazardous waste rules, there's this thing called cradle to grave, and it basically means you are responsible for that waste from the time that you generate it. So you're that generator on the left. Again, I think a generator is something you need in a power outage, but the feds like to keep it interesting, so they call you a generator. But anyway, you generate hazardous waste. And if any of you think you don't generate hazardous waste, put your seatbelt on, because you do. You generate hazardous waste, it has to be picked up by a transporter and eventually sent to a permitted, what we call a treatment, storage, and disposal facility, but you are ultimately responsible. So if that transporter takes your waste, your hazardous waste, and dumps it out back, you're liable for that. So that's the whole concept of this cradle to grave, is that you're responsible from the beginning until it's ultimately disposed. All right, every business out there has to determine if whatever they have is a hazardous waste. If it's non-hazardous, then certainly find a way to recycle it or put it into the dumpster. If it is hazardous, if you can't find a way to recycle it, we could possibly help you get out of the requirements of managing it as a hazardous waste, which will save you money because hazardous waste disposal is not cheap, or you're going to have to store it at your facility until a hazardous waste transporter can come and pick that stuff up. But whatever you do, do not throw waste into the trash unless you have a way to prove that it's not a hazardous waste. So you're going to see this slide a couple times just because I want to illustrate this point. Our hazardous waste inspectors are like poor college students dumpster diving to see what they can find from the rich kids before they go home, and they don't want mommy and daddy to see what they threw or what they had in their dorm room. So they will look in your trash cans, and if there's anything in there like aerosol cans, fluorescent light bulbs, electronics, those are things that could typically be a hazardous waste. They're not looking to see if you have a piece of cardboard in there. We know that's not hazardous. We don't care about a plastic water bottle, although it'd be nice if you recycle both of those things. But if you're going to throw something that is hazardous, potentially hazardous into the trash, the inspector is going to say, where is your proof that that's not hazardous waste? And if you don't have that documentation and it is a hazardous waste, you're automatically going for enforcement. And that's not something that Ohio EPA has any professional discretion over. That's something that we are required to do as subcontractors for the feds, the United States Environmental Protection Agency. So some common waste streams, again, those of you who are thinking that I don't generate any hazardous waste, yeah, you do. As electronics are considered a hazardous waste. Fluorescent light bulbs are typically considered a hazardous waste. Why? Because they have mercury in them. Used batteries typically are always hazardous as well. And we'll even talk about those little rechargeable ones too. So these are real common waste streams I'm going to walk through real quickly of what you need to do. Electronics. So University of Florida a long time ago, they ground all these things up and they figured out that they are typically hazardous for lead. So here are your management options. First off, don't throw these in the trash ever. Don't throw electronics in the trash. There's tons of free recycling drop-off locations for businesses and homeowners. Yes, you can go to Best Buy in some places and they will charge you for this stuff, but there's tons of free locations as well. So check that out. There's a webpage there that you can check into. Another good one is earth911.com. So if you're a homeowner and you're looking to get rid of gasoline this time of year that maybe got some water in it over the winter months, you don't want to put it into your mower, then you can find recycling locations for whatever you have from your house as well. Again, these things are typically hazardous for lead. Whatever you do, do not throw these into the trash unless you have documentation to prove that they're not hazardous. And I'm telling you, you're just wasting your money because you'd have to go to an analytical lab and get these things crushed up only to spend thousands of dollars to find out, oh, yep, it has lead in it. And I probably should have recycled it. So don't throw these things in the trash. Don't do this. Randy Sanitation. Don't do that. I think that's a fluorescent tube sticking out of there too. All right, before we get into these next ones, I want to talk about something called the universal waste rules. These are a subset of the hazardous waste requirements. They're for common waste streams, and you'll see a list of all of these here in a second. But they're intended to reduce some of your regulatory requirements if you manage them under the universal waste rules. And you only can manage these waste streams I'm going to list out here. So mercury containing devices, that could be like thermometers, thermostats, mercury switches, recalled or suspended pesticides. That's not just typical pesticides you have. These are things that have been recalled by a federal group that they're doing serious damage and they have to be pulled off the market. This is something that we added here specific in Ohio, aerosol cans. And a lot of you probably generate aerosol cans. Antifreeze was another one that we added in here in Ohio. Paint and paint related waste, again, another one that we added here in Ohio. These are unique just to Ohio. And then the remainder of the four that are under the federal requirement, mercury containing devices, recalled or suspended pesticides, fluorescent light bulbs, including LEDs, as they do sometimes have constituents in them that make them hazardous, and then batteries. So what I'm going to focus on are the fluorescent light bulbs and the batteries, because if you have a light over your head, I'm guessing all of you generate these things, and most everybody has electronics with these little rechargeable batteries too. So if you manage them under the universal waste rules, you can reduce some of your requirements, which is a good thing. That's the name of the game, actually. So with fluorescent light bulbs, best thing to do here, put them back in the same box that they came in, keep the flaps closed. So if you have the long tubes, put them back in the cardboard boxes that they were shipped in, keep the flaps closed, label the outside of the box. Universal waste lamps, don't put bulbs or something in there. Yes, you have to call them lamps because the feds call things generators and lamps, not a light bulb, but whatever, job security, right? You have 1 year, you can keep those things on site and then contact whoever normally picks up your hazardous waste and they can take those off site. If you are going to throw these into the trash, you're going to have documentation. So if you have like those green tip, eco-friendly, whatever, first off, that's a manufacturer's little sneaky way of getting around the regulations. They put a soluble form of mercury in these things. There's still just as much mercury in there. It just doesn't show up on the test if you have it analyzed. and it falls below the threshold to make it considered hazardous. So if you do have those type of bulbs, again, I do not recommend that you throw them into the trash, but if you're going to throw them in the trash, go on the manufacturer's webpage, print out that documentation. It shows that they're not hazardous, keep it on site. And whatever you do, don't throw them in the trash. I don't know if you can see it on the screen, but this is a massage parlor down in Lancaster. And you can tell I'm from down around there because I didn't call it Lancaster. But anyway, walk-ins are welcome, which is awesome. But they put all their tanning bulbs into the trash, and that's definitely not good. And if you have one of these bulb crushers, you can see Jeff Foxworthy is here. He's got his pants pulled up pretty high, has lots of safety equipment on, which is awesome because here we are with BWC, right? Nick loves this. Look at all that safety gear. What's awesome about these things is they do a great job crushing bulbs. They also do a great job of not capturing the mercury. And the horrible thing about mercury is mercury at room temperature becomes a vapor. It attaches to porous surfaces like your clothes. And then you take your clothes home and you wash your clothes with your little kids' clothes. And now everybody has mercury. Yay! So I do not recommend, if you have one of these bulb crushers, you can crush your bulbs, but now you're a large quantity generator of hazardous waste. You have to deal with a whole mess of requirements. Whatever you do, you cannot manage them as universal waste. So I do not recommend these bulb crushers whatsoever, no matter how cool this dude is standing there with his pants pulled up too high. Again, it's all about the trash. Don't throw it in the trash unless you have a way to prove it. Last thing I'm going to talk about, used batteries. So management options, you'll see there's no disposal option here. Manage these things as universal waste. Any battery that is rechargeable is going to be hazardous. So if you're worried, if you're wondering like the AA batteries, if they're not rechargeable and they didn't come from some little toy from China and Walmart, then it's probably not hazardous. But if it's rechargeable, it's probably hazardous. I recommend managing all of your batteries and not worrying if they're hazardous or not, because these things can all be recycled for their metal content. If you have lead acid batteries, like in forklifts or in the vehicles that we did not drive today, because this is virtual. Normally I say like we drove in here today, but if you have these lead acid batteries, there is an old rule that you can, all you have to do is just exchange these back with your battery supplier and you are good to go. You don't have to do anything extra. Do make sure that if you are managing these other types of batteries as universal waste, that you tape off the terminal ends, so either ends, as when these, and that is a DOT requirement carried out by the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio. And if you ever speak to them, do not refer to them as PUCO. They refuse to acknowledge you unless you call them PUCO. So you have to call them PUCO. PUCO is PUCO, not PUCO. I'm just trying to help you guys out. But they carry out the transportation requirements in Ohio, kind of like BWC carries out the OSHA requirements, kind of sort of. So lead acid batteries, they have lead plates in them. That's these little things that you can see, and then they're covered with acid as well. That's why they're called lead acid batteries. Nasty little things. I bought this, I thought APV stood for amazing performance vehicle, not so much, but I got a flat tire and I thought, well, the battery wasn't working anyway, so I'll just go ahead and use that as my car jack. But you can see there's some acid draining out there too. Don't do that. Don't do that. All right, so resources, we talked about all this good stuff. I got a couple seconds left here. So I head up this Office of Compliance Assistance and Pollution Prevention. That's a mouthful. So we refer to ourselves as OCAP and as each other as OCAPers, although nobody likes to be called an OCAPer, but I call my staff OCAPers and they love it. But what we do is we're a free non-regulatory consultant for businesses. We can help you with all of your questions that you have. If you need any permits, we can help fill out the applications and get those submitted for you. Saves you on having to pay for a consultant, which is not cheap, by the way. Also, any questions that you have, all of our services are strictly free and confidential. We have a toll-free hotline number. We can come out to your facility. We can help you identify ways that you can get out of these regulations. If you ever do get inspected, please contact us. You can call our 1-800 number. or you can always call me directly. Here's my direct number and here's my email address. Again, I head up this program. All we want to do is help businesses stay out of trouble. So if you ever do get inspected and you end up with a notice of violation and you don't have a consulting firm already on the payroll, please give us a call, as we can help stop that enforcement action right then and there, get you back in compliance, help you fill out any type of paperwork, maybe even find ways that you can avoid these regulations in the first place. Lastly, we also have millions of dollars that we give out every single year for grant or for recycling related projects. So if you need recycling containers like that, isn't that cute? That's a small one, right? That's for a small house. But anyway, if you need like recycling containers, or maybe you need like a cardboard baler, or shrink wrap baler, or whatever it might be, any type of recycling related equipment, we can help pay for that for you, help offset that cost. We also have an Ohio Materials Marketplace. This is an online platform. It's like a dating service for waste. It's like eHarmony meets Craigslist, but it's about waste. So if you have materials that you're looking to get from somebody to use as a feedstock in your operation, could be furniture, could be pallets, could be 55-gallon drums, whatever it might be, you name it, it's on it. It's called the Ohio Materials Marketplace. And we're a bunch of tree huggers. So we go, right? No, we don't go, okay. Well, that's all I have for you guys. Lastly, this flag thing behind me, we have an encouraging environmental excellence program. So if you think, hey, I'm complying with these regulations, Dan, all my permits, I'm doing stuff, but you're going above and beyond, and you're finding ways to recycle and reduce your footprint, we want to recognize you as well. And if you get one of these flags, hang it outside. I call it inspector repellent. If an inspector's coming along, they see this flag waving at on your flagpole below the state flag, below the American flag. But if you have that thing waving out there, they will know it's time to keep driving on, because you are an encouraging environmental excellent steward. And that's all I have. And I apologize, guys. I'm right at noon and I did not give time for questions.
Hey, Dan, no problem. I am personally offended though, because we are Portage County. We're extremely rural. So the only dating app we use out here is Farmers Only, pal. I just want you to know that.
I was going to say Farmers Only. I was going to say that, but I was like, where's Portage County? Oh man, I burnt some more bridges.
Hey, listen, hey, home of the Portage County Fair. That's where, pal. All right, that's where.
I was going to try to sell your safety services for you,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
don't know about that now.
Maybe not anymore.
Hey, just a couple things real quick from your presentation. I always like to take some takeaways. One
Sure.
quick question for our listeners that are still on here. Power washing. I found that really interesting for power washing.
I saw you taking notes on that.
I was like, man, I could
Were
think
you
of,
out there power washing, Nick? Don't worry.
I
This-
could think of a couple dozen
this is
companies.
recorded.
So how do we deal with that if we're power washing, especially if we're using soaps and whatever to blow off trucks at the end of the workday every day?
So there are some exemptions out there. You know, if you go to one of those little car washes and it's Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, or some sports team, high school sports team, those are exempt. And if you go to like Moo Moo Car Wash, those are all closed loop system. There's no water coming out of those. Those are all, except for off of vehicles as you pull out. But those are all closed loop. With outside power washing, you need to find a way to collect that wastewater and get it to a wastewater treatment plant. So for instance, if you're doing like power washing off of vehicles, like a fleet of vehicles in a parking lot, put a big rubber mat or something over top of the storm drain in that parking lot, and then get yourself some kind of suction and pull that stuff, you know, shot back or something, and put that wastewater into some kind of container, 55-gallon drum or a big tote, and get it to a wastewater treatment plant. Whatever you do, do not allow that to go to enter a conveyance system, which is one of those storm drains, a ditch, or to enter waters of the state. Now, technically, if the water does not reach waters of the state and it just goes on the ground, technically that's fine.
Okay.
How are you going to prove that that water is not going to eventually run off?
Right. Yeah.
That's where I'm like, find a way. And obviously you can't collect every single water droplet. And there's businesses out there that power wash off buildings. That's what they do. How are you supposed to capture that water? put a big giant rubber mat around the whole building? No. So you have to use some best management practices and some common sense. And certainly if there's anything that we can do to help any power washing businesses out there, we'd be happy to help you.
All right, one more for you. I think I really liked towards the beginning of your presentation, you talked about the 4-step self-evaluation for people to do. If you don't have it now, I'd suggest a 1-pager flow chart type of document. I'd love to see that because I'd be handing that to all my customers as we're walking through too. That could be a really good kind of handout from your organization, collaborative approach. Because I like that, I'm not an EPA guy, but I can at least help them with their initial checklist and be like, you need to go call, you need to go over here and call EPA. You need to get a hold of Dan because we got some concerns. So.
Yep. So we can certainly help you. The other thing is we have something called a self-assessment guide. So if you go to Google, good luck trying to find it, navigating on our webpage. Go to Google, type in Ohio EPA self-assessment guide, and you will find it. It should be the first item that comes up. It is not 1 page. It's like 50 pages, but it literally will walk you through a series of questions. Do you do this? Do you do that? And then it'll tell you based on how you answer whether or not you triggered the need for a permit. So that's a great way that you can kind of self-evaluate without letting anybody know. And then certainly you can contact any one of us, non-regulators, and we can always come out to your site, walk around, identify any issues, very similar to what you guys do, Nick, for BWC as well. We do the same thing on the environmental end. All of it's confidential. All of it's not subject to public records. We cannot by law share it with the inspectors or the enforcement staff.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. There's so much great information. Excited about the grant opportunities that you do there too. To our listeners, hey, reach out to them. Just like our services, this is just another great tool to put in your toolbox to make sure you're staying compliant. And hopefully together we'll make Ohio safer, healthier, and just a great place to be. So I'm excited about this.